Okay, everybody. When we last left off, I was starting the low poly. I've gone ahead and done some, not all, but you can see how I've just gone through and added low polys all over. Some are very, very tiny, and I did get a little thinner with my brush just so I could do some of the really fine work. The tinier you do your low polys, these triangles, the more detailed it's going to be, but also the more photorealistic. Oop, I realized I made a mistake. The more photorealistic it's going to be. And so you have to decide. Do you want it to be very, very pixelated, sort of, big shapes or really tiny, fine shapes? And that's really up to you. So I've gone ahead and done that over sort of this general area right here, just for the sake of time, didn't do the whole thing. And I can even turn off, my layer to see how that's looking. Every now and again, people like to do this. If you need to see how your image is looking, you can, you can make a new layer. You can do a new solid color layer. That's really weird. And I could turn off these just to see how it's looking. I'm like, yeah, I kind of like that, just to get a sense of, am I actually getting the shape of the face? Can you see the details? That's not something you have to do, but you can if you want to. So when I'm finished, I'm going to go ahead. I got my line layer, my color adjustment fill layer with blending, and my photo layer. And I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to save that as a JPEG file. And now Photoshop is going to be nice and slow. So I'm going to go into save as. I want to save it as a JPEG. That way, then I can move it over into Illustrator. I'll save it on my computer and get this thing fired up so that I can start to do stuff. All right. Yeah, save on my computer. I think I've told you that several times, Photoshop. Just thinking. Big thing is format needs to be JPEG. That's fine. That's fine. Low poly downloads JPEG and save. And I'm going to put this on a high quality image. Okay. So I'm going to close out of Photoshop. And I'm going to open up Illustrator. And let's get this thing going. Okay. So once I'm in Illustrator. Okay, so now we're in Illustrator. I've got my document set up. I went ahead and I made a 9-inch by 12-inch document. And again, you'll get in-class instructions on the exact dimensions, but that's just what I chose for this. So I'm going to open up my downloads, and I'm just going to drag that low poly JPEG into Illustrator. I'm going to place it on my workspace. So once I've got this, I'll size it up so that it kind of fits. Okay. So I've placed my document, and then I want to go ahead and embed it so that now it is not a linked file, because that's an issue with the cloud. So I'm going to size it up so it's filling my dimensions as it needs to. I went a little bit past the edge, but that's okay. So I've got that there. Then I'm going to go ahead. I got that layer down. I'm just going to lock that layer down. That way it's where I need it sized on the document. It fills the work space nicely. And it's good. So then I can put in a new layer over top, and this is going to be my polys. And I can even name it that. And I just like to do that so I know what's going on. So now I've got some options. So I'm going to zoom in. And in theory, I've done a lot of the work ahead of time. So I'm going to take my pen tool. With my pen tool now, I can go in and I can start to trace these polygons. Boom, boom, boom. And make sure I close it. Now, it's really important that you close the polygon. So you can see there's a little circle underneath my pen tool when I get to the anchor point and I click. So it's a closed poly. And I can go ahead and I can swap that out so it's empty fill, white layer. I can also, if I really want to, with this selected, I'm going to make my stroke. So I'm going to click on stroke up here. I'm going to make it justified to the inside of my red line. That way I can really see where the edge of my lines are. I just prefer it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and keep doing it that way. So I got my pen tool now. Now, if I click right here, it's going to delete that anchor point. Very frustrating. So I'm going to need to go out to another spot. Then I can come and I can join up. I'm going to make sure I'm on the previous anchor point. So when it says anchor, boom, then I can do it. And I can go back to where I started. So now I've got another closed anchor. I'm just going to keep going around. Wait until I get to those anchor points. Boom. And I'm just going to make a bunch of triangles. Now, sometimes they'll overlap. Sometimes there might be minor gaps, because when I did it with my paintbrush before, it wasn't perfect. Here, there's some issues. And so I'll have to do sort of some some movement around. So if I go here, I might notice this big triangle right here, that overlaps these. So I might need to go in, and I might need to, with my direct select arrow, I can move that anchor point. Same thing with this triangle. I can click on this exact anchor point and I can move it. This anchor point, and I can move those anchor points so that they come together. And that way I don't have that overlapping. And that can be kind of an issue. Now you might want little gaps, and sometimes a gap is little and you're like, oh, you get hung up on it. But when you zoom out, you're not going to notice that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to keep making a ton of low polys. And I do find it helpful to do kind of some of the big ones first. That way, once I've got those, then I can go ahead. I can go ahead and I can kind of work on using those sort of giant ones as guides so I know what I'm doing. And I don't have to totally follow my paintbrush lines that I made in Photoshop, but I can get pretty close. And again, every time I do it, I'm making sure that my anchors line up and that I'm closing the shape. If you ever don't close the shape, 1, 2, 3, back to the fourth, your original spot. So 4 clicks for every shape. If you don't do all 4, you are going to have issues later that are going to give you a huge headache. So I'm always making sure I'm closing back to where I started. That is essential. So I'm going to go through, make a ton of triangles, and I'll do more later. So let's pretend I'm done, just for the sake of time. Actually, I'm going to do like a handful more. There we go. Handful more. Actually, I don't want to do that one. I want to do this one up here. I'm going to have to adjust some of these later. Cool. Okay. So doing a bunch. Life is good. Let's get these done. We do a handful more. I close it and I finish this third one. And sometimes you have to pay attention to your gaps. You might realize, oh, I never actually finished that space, and that happens. Okay, so I've got a bunch done, and I'll do way more later. And I can then adjust my anchor points with my direct select tool to make everything line up as it needs to, and that's cool. The last thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead, and when I have a shape, let's say I choose this shape. So I'm going to select my shape first. Then I'm going to go to my eyedropper tool, and I'm just going to drop right in the center. I'm going to find a spot that I think is representative of the main color in here. I'm just going to click, and that's going to fill my whole shape with that color. Now, if I don't like it, I can just Command Z, and I can click a little bit over. Command Z, I can click on this little pimple. Ugh, that's way too dark. So I got to go and find what I think is the most representative color of this general area. Let's do that. Cool. Then I'm going to go back to my select tool. Now I can do that with my keyboard shortcut V, goes back to my arrow. I click on my thing. My keyboard shortcut I takes me back to my eyedropper, and I click. I'm going V, selecting, I, clicking. V, select a new shape. I, click somewhere in that shape. So now I'm just going through, I'm selecting I, and I'm finding a color. V, selecting a shape. I, finding what I think is a good representative middle ground color. Again, if I don't love the color, I can move it around until I get to a color that I'm happy with. All right. V, I click on the shape. I, the color. V, shape. I, color. So I'm just going to do that now over my triangles. Now you can wait and do this when you're done so you can see everything after you've done all the triangles, or you can go ahead and do it as you go. That's really your personal choice in terms of what works best for you. And the other thing I'm going to say is just, make sure that you're paying attention to the colors. Are you happy with them? because you're trying to kind of I'm gonna swap that out for a second. You're trying to make sure this has got to be sideburns. I need it to be that kind of darker color. So you really control. There's a lot of different colors in this area if I look at all these pixels. So then I need to be strategic about what I click on, because the question is, what am I trying to make this look like? And that's pretty crucial. So I'm just going through, clicking. I'm doing this a lot faster than I would normally have you do it. Again, because I want to respect your time. So that's how that works. That's the low poly. Now, if you want to see how it's turning out, you can always turn off your photo layer. You might also then realize, oh, I got some mistakes. So I got to zoom in, grab my direct select tool, grab the anchor point, and move that over. Cool. So you might have little gaps. Maybe you want little gaps. I don't know. You decide what you need to do. But we'll see how this is turning out. So I'm going to go ahead and make a couple more polys, and then you'll see how this goes. And I'll catch back up with you in a minute.